What's up, everybody? Getting that workout in today. Hope everybody doing well. Basically, I seen this interview on DJ Vlad with this man named Blue Boy, which I've actually heard of him. I'm 28, but I've heard of him from older guys, right? When I was younger, actually, just about his heart. You know, him having a lion heart, you know, really brave. Now, as I watched this interview on DJ Vlad, it was just, there's a lot to be learned from that, you know, as far as somebody who does that much time, like this man did 39 years, I think it was, and 39 years at a penitentiary. And I think he said he was only in general population like 2 years out of that. So just imagine being in a box, you know. It's different, super different. What I wanted to say was, because I know a lot of young people watching, a lot of people around my age, my generation, is y'all gotta understand something. When you go through things like that, when you locked up so long like that, like an animal, you're never really gonna be the same. That's just the truth, right? You're never really gonna be the same when you gotta do things like catch bodies, murder people, constantly watch your back, constantly live in an environment. Look at it like this. We're not even supposed to be, as humans, we're not supposed to be in no type of jail cell, in no type of box. You notice everything's like a box. Our cell phones are a box. The TV's a box. Jail cells are boxes. The bed's a box. The windows are a box. Everything's like seeing through a box. This is why they say think outside the box. So when you just in a box, right? And you live a majority of your life in a box, you have to think about what type of growth that's stopping. You get what I'm saying? What type of growth spiritually that can even stop? Don't get me wrong, they can never truly lock your mind up. But when you're in there from a young age, a boy, and you don't even really get a chance at that point. So the point I'm trying to make is people really got to think about the decisions they make, the choices they make. You know, at the end of the day, think about your choices, because it all come down to choices. We all have things we got to face in our life, and that's just the truth. You know, people concerned from this video and think I'm just talking corny, I'm being corny, you know, because there's a positive message. But truth is, like, I really pay attention, and I thank people like Blue Boy, because I learn from things like that. You know, I really do. I watch stuff like that, and I learn and I observe. People only seeing what they look at as the glory of it, like the reputation, but they're not looking at the pain aspect, how that physically affects you, how that emotionally, how that psychologically or spiritually. And a lot of people don't even look at the fact that there is an afterlife. There is a life after this, right? And if you stuck here and you die and you move on with regrets, how are you gonna move on? How are you gonna move forward? If you constantly got regrets, if you still stuck here, right? People be focused on the minuscule things. They're not looking at the big picture. Most people, the average person, is not gonna just be able to even do a week in some box if they've never been in that before. You know, that's not normal. That's not normal. You know, and as far as with him speaking on killing Larry Davis, how I feel about that is just like, at the end of the day, you know, Larry Davis, he was known as someone who took on the police in a shootout, but at the end of the day, you never really know who anybody is. Excuse me, that's just the truth. You never know who anybody is, right? I don't really go off reputation much. I don't, personally, me, I stick to myself, but I don't go off reputation. I don't really, that's not something I really care about. I go off if I gotta meet you, I gotta feel your character, I gotta be able to read your vibes, and I gotta be able to see what you really stand for, because anybody can say anything. You know, throughout history, they've constantly made heroes villains and made villains heroes. You know, they've demonized a lot of great people throughout history, and then they've made people who weren't even great heroes, you know? So you got to be really careful about what you honor. Now, I don't know actually what went down between the Blue Boy and Larry Davis, but what I will say is, as far as all of us that's just the viewers looking from the outside looking in, try not to get too emotional about it, and try to just fall back and just observe what's being said, you know, observe all that, and then you tell me, because people tend to be choosy and want to pick sides, right? And be like, well, nah, he killed someone who took on the police, he killed the brother, he killed the. Listen, I was at a job, right? And this woke me up too. I was at a job, and there was this lady, this Puerto Rican lady, right? And I had seen, this is why I will never go back in these jobs. I always find a way to be my own boss. We don't belong in this system, right? It was designed for us to fail. A lot of people may disagree. That's your choice. I know through my knowledge and what I've learned and how I apply my knowledge has worked for me, and I'm doing just fine and that's just my beliefs. But I was working with this lady. She was about in the late 60s, and there was a manager who was you know, so-called white. You know, I don't like to do the color thing. I don't like to just be like white, black, because I understand the illusion behind that, right? But there was this so-called white lady, and I heard her calling this Puerto Rican lady that was working, calling her a bitch and a skank. Like, hey, move, excuse my language for the young viewers, but she was like, yeah, come on, move it, bitch, da da da, skank, da da. I'm like, excuse me. Like, your mouth is really like crazy, you know? Your mouth is crazy. She was like, oh, you know, you have a problem with that? I'm like, she said, are you offended by that? I said, I mean, yeah, look how you talking to her. She said, oh, well, that's how I am. You know, everybody knows I don't give a F-U-C-K. I said, if you don't give a F-U-C-K, I super don't give a F-U-C-K. Like, you got the right one. You know, she's like, oh, I was in the Air Force. This is how we talk on base. I'm like, but this ain't the base. This ain't the base. Long story short, my point is, at that moment, I seen that Puerto Rican lady as my mother, right? And she was from the Bronx too, right? This job was out in PA. I seen her as my mother. Like, I didn't see no difference. Like, you know, they be having that African ancestry. They be having that Taino ancestry, that indigenous blood. And at the end of the day, when I heard this lady calling her B-I-T-C-H, calling her skank, like I said, it was all I could think about was like my mother. That was like my mother at that point. You know, so the separation, I understand prison politics is different, but as far as Puerto Ricans, man, we got to be honest. A lot of them they got to share that African ancestry, share that indigenous blood, share that native blood, and you know, it's like what so-called African Americans. You know, a lot of them through slavery, there was a lot of rapings going on. So there was a lot of the colonizers' blood. So when y'all be like, well, they got, you know, European, and they got, you know, Taino, and they got African, I mean, you would be the same pretty much. You know, you would be the same in a sense. You know, you got Puerto Ricans who's darker than me. So we got to start opening our eyes, you know, and it's just cultural differences. Just like you got Jamaicans, you got Haitians, they sound different. It's just cultural differences. But in all reality, we're supposed to be standing as one. I wanted to speak on SKEAM Team 100, who I see who's covering a lot on Blue Boy. And really what I wanted to say was, this is not, I don't have no disrespect or nothing. Like, I'm not a follower like a lot of people. I actually, when I listen to SKEAM Team, there's certain things he said that actually made sense that I wanted to touch on, that he said a long time ago about basically a lot of these dudes that be up north or that be in prison, a lot of these older dudes, and this is a message to the younger audience, you know, they be up there studying Art of War, 48 Laws of Power, and they use that and they manipulate their own people. And I ain't gonna lie, if Scheme was to ever see this video, I appreciate him saying that, because that's something that's not talked about. That's something that's not talked about. I personally seen that. You know, a lot of people are manipulating and using their own people. So for you youngins out there, y'all also got to realize, the ones that's gang banging and doing all these things, stop putting your trust in the people and all these OGs, all this stuff, because a lot of them are already corrupted through the system. It's a Frankenstein effect. They might have had that innocence to them, but it gets corrupted over time and they become monsters. All they've known how to do is survive. Someone who was raised off of love and someone who was raised off survival are going to think differently. That's how they operate now. So y'all got to be very, very careful, because Scheme Team, that's something that people do need to hear, that he said, that a lot of these older heads, they be in the mountains, they be studying art of war, they be reading, they be getting real intelligent, real smart. Most of them not intelligent enough to actually stay out of prison half the time, but enough to manipulate and abuse power. And they're no different than a colonizer at that point, because they'll take youngins and they'll abuse them. You know, they'll sit here and they'll say, oh, you know, protect children and all that. But, you know, they say the logical part of your brain, right, doesn't even fully develop till you're 25. So if you're taking a 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old and you're manipulating them and you're sending them to do things to risk their life and put their life in jeopardy, then you're taking advantage of a child. You're abusing a child, right? And they know what they be doing, man. That is true. So I wouldn't just take away from Scheme, because I know how everybody is. People like to trying to find some comfortability on this bench, but people like to pick and choose. I go with the message, not the messenger. And there's certain guys who, you know, even if people don't like them, whatever, they're saying some stuff that's going over heads. That's true. And you gotta add their experience in, whether you like them or not. You know, that is true. That is something that is not talked about. It's just because somebody's shouting the youth, you know, certain dudes are master manipulators, and y'all kids got to understand that. They're seasoned master manipulators, and they know exactly how to use and abuse you. So understand that, you know, and just be smart. You know, create your own reality out here. Create your own reality out here. Don't follow nobody. Don't follow nobody's path. Take the message, not the messenger. There's a lot of people out here that's just, it's like a cult. Like they're looking for some type of leadership. Be that leader yourself. You know, believe in yourself. And that's all I'm gonna say. Salute, salute, salute.